Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The barn at Second Chance. Haven glowed like a lantern in the Pennsylvania dusk, its weathered beams strung with fairy lights that twinkled against the fading sky. The air hummed with the scent of grilled burgers and hay, the joyful chaos of barking dogs mingling with the laughter of donors in flannel shirts and sundresses. Tables draped in checkered cloth held pitchers of lemonade and baskets of cornbread, while a scruffy terrier named Biscuit darted between legs chasing a stray tennis ball. It was the annual fundraiser for the animal rescue, a night to save strays and dream big. But for Ethan Cole, standing on a makeshift stage, it was something else entirely. A reckoning. He gripped the microphone, his gray-green eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. Lila Hayes stood near the back, her black dress hugging her frame, her braids catching the light like a crown. Her deep brown eyes glistened wary but soft, as if she wasn't sure whether to run or stay. Ethan's heart pounded the weight of every choice he'd made, pressing against his ribs. The crowd hushed, sensing something bigger than a speech about shelter expansions. "I've made mistakes," Ethan said, his voice steady but raw, cutting through the barn's hum. "I hid who I was from someone I loved, thinking it'd keep her safe. Instead, I hurt her." Lila Hayes. He locked eyes with her, his throat tight. "You're the heart of everything I want to be." "I'm sorry." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in a denim jacket whispered to her friend, "Is that the Ethan Cole?" Ethan pushed on his jaw set. A reporter, Vanessa Klein, wrote, "Lies about Lila calling her a gold digger out to use me. It's garbage, and I'm suing her for it. Lila's the real deal, and she deserves better than my secrets." Lila's hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling over. The barn felt smaller, the lights brighter as Ethan stepped off the stage, his boots thudding on the wood. He moved toward her, the crowd parting, but Lila's expression held a storm. Hope hurt, and something he couldn't name. Would she forgive him? Or had he lost her for good? The question hung like a held breath, the answer hidden in the shadows of her eyes. Months earlier, the same barn at Second Chance Haven was quieter, bathed in the golden haze of a late afternoon. The animal rescue sat on the edge of a small Pennsylvania town, its gravel lot framed by sprawling oaks and wildflowers that swayed in the breeze. Red and blue kennels lined the yard, each one home to a hopeful mutt or a wary cat, their eyes tracking every visitor. The air carried the earthy tang of hay and the faint musk of fur, punctuated by the bleat of a goat named Muffin, who stood on a stump like he owned the place. Volunteers in faded tees bustled about, hauling bags of kibble or scrubbing water bowls, their laughter weaving through the steady bark of a hound in the distance. This was a place where broken things found a second shot, a mission that felt like a foreign language to Ethan Cole. Ethan didn't belong here. At 38, he was a ghost in his own life, the founder of Nexus Security, a cybersecurity empire worth billions that shielded banks and governments from digital wolves. His faded gray t-shirt and worn jeans were a deliberate mask, a way to slip through a world that didn't know his name or his bank account. His dark hair was tousled, his jaw shadowed with stubble, and his gray-green eyes, sharp as sea glass, darted nervously as he guided his 8-year-old nephew Noah through the shelter's gate. Noah clutched a stuffed raccoon named Scout, his freckled face pale, his sneakers caked with mud from the lot. Ethan wasn't cut out for this. He'd promised his sister Hannah he'd look after Noah while she and her husband worked on a medical mission in Africa. But looking after was proving trickier than closing a 9-figure deal. Noah was a quiet kid, sensitive with a knack for bottling up his fears until they spilled over. Hannah's warning echoed in Ethan's head. "He's fragile, Ethan. Don't mess this up." So here they were at the rescue because Noah loved animals and Ethan was desperate to see him smile. Noah knelt by a kennel, his small hands gripping Scout as he peered at a beagle puppy named Luna. She was a scrappy thing, all floppy ears and soulful eyes, but today her fur was dull, her body curled tight, her breathing shallow. "Uncle Ethan," Noah whispered, his voice trembling. "Luna's sick. She's gonna die, isn't she?" Ethan crouched beside him, his hand hovering over Noah's shoulder, awkward and unsure. "She'll be okay, buddy," he said, forcing a confidence he didn't feel. "They've got folks here who know what they're doing." But the words rang hollow. Ethan could reroute a hacker's attack in seconds, but a scared kid and a sick puppy, that was uncharted territory. His sister's voice nagged. "You're all he's got right now." He was failing and he knew it. Across the yard, Lila Hayes moved like she was born for this place. At 32, she was a veterinarian who'd poured her soul into Second Chance Haven, her days a blur of surgeries and late-night bottle feedings. Her one-bedroom apartment in town with its thrift store couch and shelves stuffed with vet journals was a far cry from Ethan's sleek penthouse. Today, her cargo pants and blue scrub top were streaked with dirt, her braids pulled into a loose ponytail, her mahogany skin glowing under the sun. Her deep brown eyes, sharp but warm, caught Noah's panic from 20 yards away. Lila didn't know. Ethan Cole didn't know he could buy the shelter without blinking. To her, he was just a guy with a nervous kid, his t-shirt too clean for the muddy work of a volunteer. But she'd always had a gift for spotting pain, the twitch of a stray's tail, the quiver in a child's lip. Maybe it was growing up in a working-class neighborhood, reading her cousin's silences over Sunday dinners, or maybe it was Ryan, her ex, who'd promised to fund her dream clinic, then left her with nothing but a lease and a bruised heart. Whatever it was, Noah's fear pulled her like a current. She wasn't on Luna's case. Her shift was in the cat ward, stitching up a tabby with a torn ear. But when Noah's whisper cracked into a sob, "She's all alone." Lila dropped her clipboard and crossed the lot, her boots crunching on gravel. The other volunteers glanced up, but she ignored them. Her focus locked on the boy. "Hey, little man," she said, kneeling beside him, her voice soft with a Pennsylvania lilt, warm as a summer evening. "Luna's giving you a scare." "Huh?" Noah hiccuped, knotting his grip on Scout, so tight his knuckles paled. Lila's eyes flicked to Luna, labored, breathing pale gums, likely parvovirus. She'd need fluid stat. But first the kid. She pulled a bandana from her pocket, its edges stitched with tiny bones, a gift from her dad before he passed. "This is my lucky bandana," she said, holding it out. "Keeps me calm when I'm saving pups like Luna. Wanna hold it for her?" Noah hesitated, then took it, wiping his eyes with the soft cotton. His breathing steadied, the sobs fading to sniffles. "My dad used to say," Lila went on her tone, "gentle but sure fear means you care. It's okay to let it out. Even grown-ups do." She glanced at Ethan, her gaze piercing like she saw right through his flannel to the uncle out of his depth. The man who didn't know how to fix this. Ethan swallowed his throat tight. The shelter's noise box. The clatter of a water bucket faded, but Lila didn't flinch under the curious stares of volunteers. She leaned closer to Noah, her voice a whisper. "Want to help me make Luna feel better? You can be her cheerleader." Noah nodded, his eyes still wet but brighter. Lila stood leading him to the clinic, Ethan trailing behind like a shadow. The barn-turned clinic was a patchwork of function stainless steel tables, shelves crammed with gauze and syringes, the faint hum of a portable X-ray machine. Lila worked fast, hooking Luna to an IV, her hands steady as she murmured to the puppy, "Hang in there, girl." Noah watched, clutching the bandana, his fear easing with every calm word. Lila spoke. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, his chest aching. This woman, a stranger, had done what he couldn't. She'd made Noah feel safe. When Luna's breathing steadied, Lila ruffled Noah's hair. "You're a champ, kid," she said, her smile lighting up the room. She turned to Ethan, her expression neutral but kind. "Kids need to know they're not alone, Mr. Ethan," he said, his voice rough like he'd been holding his breath. "Thank you. We owe you big time." Lila shook her head, brushing a stray braid behind her ear. "Just doing my job. Keep an eye on him. He's got a big heart." She walked away, her boots echoing on the concrete floor, and Ethan felt something shift inside him like a lock clicking open. He looked at Noah now, petting Luna gently, the bandana tucked in his pocket, and Hannah's warning hit harder than ever. "Don't mess this up." For the first time, he wasn't sure he could avoid it. Noah tugged his sleeve, his voice small but steady. "Can we come back tomorrow, Uncle Ethan? Luna needs me." Ethan nodded, his eyes still on the spot where Lila had disappeared. "Yeah, buddy. We'll come back." But it wasn't just for Luna or even Noah. Something about Lila, her calm, her strength, the way she'd seen Noah when Ethan hadn't had cracked his carefully built walls. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew one thing: he needed to see her again. The sun dipped below the oaks, casting long shadows across the kennels. Muffin the goat bleated, as if reminding Ethan he was still an outsider here. But as he led Noah to their beat-up rental car, a deliberate choice to blend in, Ethan felt a spark he hadn't in years. Lila Hayes wasn't just a vet. She was a force, and she'd just turned his world upside down with a single bandana. If Lila's hug for Noah and her quiet strength with Luna tugged at your heart, hit that subscribe button to catch more stories about love, trust, and second chances. Drop a comment below. When's a time you helped someone through a tough moment? What happened? Let's keep this journey going. The gravel lot at Second Chance. Haven crunched under Ethan Cole's boots as he pulled into the animal rescue a few days after Luna's scare. The Pennsylvania morning was crisp, the air sharp with the scent of pine and wet earth, the oaks overhead just starting to blush with autumn. The kennels buzzed with life dogs yipping for breakfast, a tabby cat named Socks stretching on a wooden bench, and Muffin the goat, eyeing Ethan like he was still an intruder. Volunteers hauled buckets of water, their voices carrying over the steady hum of a leaf blower in the distance. Ethan adjusted his faded flannel, his gray-green eyes scanning for Lila Hayes, though he'd never admit that's why he was here. Noah bounced beside him, clutching Scout, his stuffed raccoon, his freckled face brighter than it had been in weeks. "Can I see Luna first?" "Uncle Ethan?" he asked, tugging at Ethan's sleeve. "I bet she missed me." "Sure thing, buddy," Ethan said, ruffling Noah's hair, though his attention drifted to the barn where Lila had worked her magic. He'd sent the shelter a hefty donation, anonymous, wired through a shell company after Luna's recovery. A thank you he couldn't put into words, but money felt cheap compared to what Lila had done, calming Noah with a bandana and a smile. Ethan wasn't used to feeling indebted, and it gnawed at him like an itch he couldn't scratch. Inside the barn, Lila was elbow-deep in a crate, coaxing a skittish spaniel with a treat. Her cargo pants were dusted with fur, her blue scrub top rolled to the elbows, her braids tied back with a scrunchie. She moved with a quiet confidence, her mahogany skin catching the sunlight that streamed through a high window. When she spotted Noah, her face lit up. "There's my cheerleader," she said, standing, her voice warm with that Pennsylvania lilt. "Come to check on Luna?" Noah nodded, darting to Luna's kennel where the beagle puppy wagged her tail, her eyes brighter now, her fur starting to shine. Ethan hung back, his hands in his pockets, trying to find words that didn't sound rehearsed. "She's looking good," he said, nodding at Luna. "You're a miracle worker." Lila shrugged, brushing her hands on her pants. "Just doing what I'm trained for." Noah's the real MVP, kept her spirits up. She glanced at him, her deep brown eyes sharp but kind, like she was sizing him up. "You two sticking around today?" Thought we'd lend a hand, Ethan said, his half-smile betraying a nervousness he wasn't used to. If you'll have us. Lila raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement crossing her face. Can you handle a mop? We're short on cleaners. I've handled worse, Ethan said, though he wasn't sure he had. Boardrooms, sure, cyber attacks, no problem. But mopping a kennel while a goat stared him down. That was new. For the next hour, Ethan followed Lila's lead, scrubbing water bowls and hauling bags of kibble while Noah played with Luna, his laughter echoing through the yard. Lila was everywhere, checking a cat's stitches, joking with a volunteer, tossing a ball for a hound named Rusty. Ethan watched her, struck by how she made it look effortless, like she was born to stitch broken things back together. He wanted to know her not just as the vet who'd saved Luna, but as the woman behind that bone-stitched bandana. The thought caught him off guard like a punch he didn't see coming. At noon, Lila called a break, handing Ethan a bottle of water from a cooler. They sat on a picnic bench, Noah sprawled in the grass nearby, giggling as Luna licked his face. So, Lila said, cracking open her own bottle. What's your deal, Ethan? You don't strike me as the shelter type. Ethan took a sip, buying time. Just helping out my nephew, he said, keeping his tone light. His parents are overseas, so I'm on uncle duty. Figured this place would keep him busy. Lila nodded, but her eyes narrowed slightly like she was peeling back layers. Fair enough, but you're not from around here, are you? Got a city vibe too clean for this mud? He chuckled, caught off guard. Guilty. I travel a lot for work. Tech stuff. Nothing exciting. It was a half-truth one he'd polished over years of dodging paparazzi and gold diggers. Nexus. Security was a name that opened doors and drew sharks, and he wasn't ready to let Lila see that side of him. Not yet, Tech. Huh? Lila said, her tone teasing but probing, like fixing printers or hacking the Pentagon. Somewhere in between, Ethan said, flashing a grin that usually disarmed questions. But Lila just tilted her head like she wasn't buying it before she could press. Noah ran over, holding up the bandana. Can I keep this? Lila? He asked, his eyes wide. It's magic, right? Lila laughed, a sound that warmed the air. It's yours, kid, but only if you promise to visit Luna, deal, Noah said, stuffing the bandana in his pocket and running back to the puppy. Ethan watched his chest tightening. You're good with him, he said, his voice softer now. Better than me? Kids are easy, Lila said, leaning back on the bench. They just need to know you're listening. You'll get the hang of it. Ethan wasn't so sure, but her words stuck like a seed taking root. He wanted to say more, to ask about her, but a sleek black SUV rolled into the lot, kicking up dust. A woman stepped out, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her tailored blazer screaming money. She carried a notepad, her heels clicking on the gravel as she scanned the shelter like a hawk. Ethan's stomach sank. He knew her. Vanessa Klein, a financial reporter who'd once tried to charm her way into his life, only to turn bitter when he shut her down. Ethan. Cole. Vanessa said, her voice smooth but sharp, her blue eyes glinting as she approached. Didn't expect to find you slumming it out here. Ethan's jaw tightened, his easy smile. Gone, Vanessa, he said, standing his tone flat. What do you want? Working on a piece about local charities, she said, flipping open her notepad, though her eyes were on Lila. This place is cute, very grassroots. She extended a hand to Lila, her smile. Thin. Vanessa Klein, Financial Pulse. And you are? Lila Hayes, Lila said, shaking her hand, her expression neutral but wary. I'm one of the vets here. Charming, Vanessa said, her gaze flicking over Lila's scrubs. You must be thrilled to have Ethan's support. He's got a knack for picking causes that make him look good. Ethan stepped forward, his voice low. That's enough. Vanessa, write your story and go. Vanessa's smile didn't falter, but her eyes were cold. Oh, I will. Just making sure I get the full picture. She turned to Lila, her tone syrupy. Word of advice. Ethan's generous, but he's got a whole other life he doesn't share. Be careful. Lila's spine stiffened, her fingers tightening around her water bottle. Thanks for the tip, she said. Her voice steady, but Ethan caught the flicker of doubt in her eyes. Vanessa sauntered back to her SUV, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. She's just stirring trouble, Ethan said, turning to Lila, his hands raised like he could wave away the moment. Old grudge. Don't let her get to you. Lila studied him, her gaze piercing. Is she right? You got some secret life I should know about. Ethan's throat tightened. He wanted to tell her about Nexus Security, the billions, the vultures who circled his name, but the words wouldn't come. Not yet. I'm just a guy trying to do right by his nephew, he said, his voice quieter now. That's the truth. Lila nodded, but the warmth in her eyes had cooled like a door half closed. Okay, she said, standing. I've got a surgery to prep for. See you around, Ethan? She walked away, her boots kicking up dust, and Ethan felt a pang like he'd just lost something he couldn't name. Noah ran up oblivious, chattering about Luna, but Ethan's mind was on Lila on the way. Vanessa's words had planted a seed of doubt. He'd have to fix this, but how? That evening, Ethan took Noah to Brew and Paws, a dog-friendly cafe a few miles from the shelter. The place was a cozy haven, its brick walls lined with Polaroids of adoptable pets, the air thick with the scent of espresso and peanut butter biscuits. Dogs lounged under tables, their tails thumping while locals swapped stories about the Steelers' latest game. Ethan had texted Lila a casual invite to join them for coffee, hoping to smooth things over. To his surprise, she'd agreed, though her reply was short. Be there at 7. Don't expect much. Lila arrived right on time, her denim jacket slung over a green t-shirt, her braids loose around her shoulders. She slid into the booth across from Ethan, her eyes guarded but not cold. Noah grinned, holding up a drawing of Luna he'd scribbled on a napkin. Look, Lila. It's for you. That's awesome, kid, Lila said, her smile softening as she took the napkin. You're an artist. Ethan pushed a coffee toward her black one sugar. Just how the shelter's manager said she liked it. Peace offering, he said, his tone light but earnest. For earlier, Vanessa's got no business messing with your head. Lila wrapped her fingers around the mug, her gaze steady. She's not the problem, Ethan. It's the fact you dodged her question. And mine. You're hiding something and I don't play games. Ethan's chest tightened. She was right, but the truth felt like a loaded gun. I'm not playing games, he said, leaning forward. I'm here, aren't I? Helping at the shelter, hanging out with Noah. That's real. Maybe, Lila said, sipping her coffee. But real doesn't mean open. I've been burned before. Ethan guy with a slick smile and big promises. I'm not doing that again. Her words hit like a jab, not because they were harsh, but because they were honest. Ethan thought of Ryan, the ex she'd mentioned in passing at the shelter, the one who'd left her high and dry. I'm not that guy, he said, his voice low, almost fierce. Give me a chance to prove it. Lila held his gaze, her lips parting like she might argue, but Noah interrupted, tugging her sleeve. Can you come to the park with us tomorrow? Luna's gonna be there. Lila's expression softened, and she ruffled Noah's hair. We'll see, champ. Gotta check my schedule. She stood grabbing her jacket. Thanks for the coffee, Ethan. But if you want my trust, start with the truth. She left her cedarwood scent lingering, and Ethan sank back in the booth, his coffee untouched. Noah chattered about Luna, but Ethan's mind was racing. Vanessa's visit wasn't a coincidence. She'd always had a knack for sniffing out his vulnerabilities, and Lila's doubt that flicker in her eyes was a warning. He'd spent years building walls to protect himself, but now those walls were keeping him from the one person who made him feel alive. The next morning, Ethan and Noah hit Willow Bend, a park along the river where the shelter held adoption events. The grass was damp with dew, the willows drooping over the water like green curtains, their reflections shimmering in the current. Families milled about, kids chasing balloons while dogs romped in a fenced-off area. Luna bounded toward Noah, her tail a blur, and Ethan felt a rare lightness watching his nephew laugh. Lila was there helping set up a booth, her flannel shirt tied around her waist, her smile easy as she handed out flyers. Ethan approached his heart, doing a weird flip. "You made it," he said, nodding at Noah and Luna. "He's in heaven." Lila glanced over her lips, twitching. "Hard to say no to that kid," she said, but her eyes flicked to Ethan, cautious. "You're sticking around, huh?" "Trying to," Ethan said, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Look about yesterday." "Don't," Lila cut in, her voice firm but not unkind. "Just be straight with me, Ethan. That's all I'm asking." He nodded, the weight of her words settling in. "I hear you. I'll do better." She studied him, then handed him a stack of flyers. "Good start, by passing these out. We need homes for these pups." Ethan took the flyers, their fingers brushing for a split second, sending a spark up his arm. He wanted to say more, to tell her he was falling for her, but Vanessa's shadow loomed, and Lila's trust was a fragile thing. As he moved through the crowd, handing out flyers, he caught sight of a familiar black SUV parked across the street. Vanessa watching from behind tinted windows. His blood ran cold. Whatever she was planning, it wasn't over, and Lila was in her crosshairs. The kitchen in Lila Hayes' one-bedroom apartment was a cramped, cozy mess. Mismatched mugs stacked on a shelf, a thrift store table wobbling under the weight of a cornbread pan, and a faint scent of sage lingering from the night before. The late afternoon sun slanted through a window, catching the dust motes as Lila stirred a bowl of batter, her braids swinging gently. Across from her, Ethan Cole stood in a borrowed apron, his sleeves rolled up, a smear of flour on his cheek. He was trying to chop scallions, his billionaire hands clumsy with the knife, and Lila couldn't help but laugh. "You're butchering those poor greens," she said, her Pennsylvania lilt teasing as she leaned over to adjust his grip. "It's a knife, not a hacksaw." Ethan grinned, his gray-green eyes crinkling. "Give me a break, Hayes. I'm a tech guy, not a chef." "Tech guy? Huh?" Lila said, arching an eyebrow, but her tone was lighter now, less guarded than it had been weeks ago. "You keep saying that, but I'm starting to think you're just dodging." He chuckled. Dodging indeed, though the truth. Nexus security. Billions a life of glass towers felt closer to the surface every day. For now he focused on the scallions, on the warmth of Lila's kitchen, on the way. Her laugh made his chest feel like it was unfolding. Noah was sprawled on the living room rug, coloring a picture of Luna, the beagle puppy, while Lila's rescue cat Clover batted at a stray crayon. It was the kind of moment Ethan hadn't known he craved. Simple, real, a world away from boardrooms and bodyguards. The past few weeks had been a slow dance of trust. Ethan and Noah showed up at Second Chance Haven most days. Ethan mopping kennels or hauling feed while Noah trailed Lila like a shadow. They'd fallen into a rhythm. Mornings at the shelter, lunches at Brew and Paw's, evenings at Willow Bend, where Noah flew kites and Lila tossed sticks for stray dogs. Ethan had opened up bit by bit stories of growing up dirt poor in Ohio, losing his dad to a factory accident, building Nexus from a beat-up laptop in a dorm room. Lila listened, her sharp eyes softening, and shared her own dreams. A mobile vet clinic to serve rural towns, a legacy for her dad who taught her to love animals. But Vanessa Klein's warning still lingered a splinter in Lila's mind. Ethan paid for everything in cash. coffee shelter supplies, even a new tire for a volunteer's truck. He took calls outside, his voice low, his answers vague. Work stuff, nothing big. Lila wanted to trust him, but Ryan's betrayal, promises of a clinic, a future, then a new woman made her cautious. Still, Ethan's quiet care, the way he watched Noah with a mix of pride and panic, chipped away at her walls. "All right, Chef," Lila said, sliding the cornbread into the oven. "You're on cleanup duty. Don't slack." "Wouldn't dream of it," Ethan said, saluting with a dish towel. Their fingers brushed as he took the bowl, and Lila's breath hitched a spark flickering between them. She turned away, busying herself with plates, but Ethan caught the flush on her cheeks, and his heart did a stupid flip. Noah bounded in, holding up his drawing. "Look, Lila, it's Luna, and you're her hero." Lila knelt, her smile wide. "This is awesome, kid. I'm framing it for the shelter." Noah beamed, hugging her, and Ethan felt a pang, part gratitude, part longing. Lila was weaving herself into their lives, and he wasn't sure he could stop it, or if he even wanted to. Days later, Ethan stood outside Brew & Pause, the cafe's neon sign buzzing in the dusk. He'd asked Lila to meet him, a nervous energy thrumming in his veins. The shelter was planning a big push for funding, and Ethan had an idea, a donor event at his beach house in Outer Banks, North Carolina. It was a risk letting Lila into his world, but he wanted her to see what he could do for Second Chance Haven. And if he was honest, he wanted her closer, even if it meant dancing near the truth. Lila arrived, her denim jacket zipped against the chill, her braids tucked under a knit cap. "This better be good." "Cold," she said, sliding into a booth. "I'm missing a Law and Order rerun for you." Ethan slid a coffee across the table. "Black one, sugar." "Big ask," he said, his tone light, but his eyes serious. "There's a donor event at my place in North Carolina Beach House. Fancy folks. Good cause. I want you there for the shelter. You in?" Lila's eyes narrowed, her fingers tapping the mug. "Your place, like a condo or something." "Something like that," Ethan said, dodging again, his smile tight. "It's a chance to get real money for your mobile clinic idea. Bring a friend if you want." "Mia, right? Make it fun." Lila studied him, her gut whispering caution. A beach house sounded bigger than a tech guy should have, but the shelter was scraping by, and her dream clinic felt further away every day. "All right," she said finally, her voice firm. "But I'm holding you to that funding, Ethan." "No funny business. Scout's honor," he said, raising a hand, and Lila laughed, the sound easing the knot in his chest. But as she left, her cedarwood scent fading, Ethan felt the weight of what he wasn't saying. Outer Banks would test them, and he wasn't sure either of them was ready. The Outer Banks estate was a dream carved in glass and stone, its white walls gleaming against the Atlantic's roar. The infinity pool shimmered like it was trying to merge with the ocean, and inside abstract paintings, each worth a small car, hung above sleek furniture. Lila stepped from the hired car, her navy dress borrowed from Mia, feeling like she'd wandered into a movie set. Mia, in a red jumpsuit, whistled low. "Ethan's place is a freaking palace," she said, nudging Lila. "You sure he's just a tech guy?" Lila's stomach twisted, Vanessa's warning echoing. "He's got a whole other life." "Let's just get through this," she muttered, smoothing her dress. The crowd, CEOs, philanthropists, a senator in a seersucker suit mingled on the lawn, their laughter sharp over the clink of champagne flutes. Ethan appeared, his linen shirt open at the collar, his gray-green eyes locking on Lila like she was the only one there. "You made it," he said, his smile boyish, though his hand brushed hers with a warmth that lingered. "You look... wow. Don't get used to it," Lila said, teasing, but her cheeks warmed. "This better be worth the drive, Cole." "It will be," he said, guiding her through the crowd. He introduced her to donors, his pitch for the shelter smooth but genuine, and Lila found herself relaxing, even charming a tech mogul into a six-figure pledge. Mia worked the room, her laugh, drawing eyes, but Lila caught whispers. Cole's new friend, small-town vet. Interesting choice. The name Cole snagged, but Ethan's hand on her back steadied her like an anchor in a storm. Then Vanessa Klein appeared, a vision in a gold gown. Her blonde hair swept up her smile. A blade, Ethan Cole. She purred, her eyes raking Lila and... Lila, right? The vet from that sweet little shelter. Lila's spine stiffened, but she matched Vanessa's smile. "That's me. Nice to see you again, Miss Klein." "Charming," Vanessa said, sipping champagne. Ethan's always had a soft spot for underdogs. She turned to a nearby donor, her voice carrying, "You know Ethan Cole, don't you? Nexus Security Forbes' 22nd richest, give or take. Quite the catch for a small-town cause." The air sucked out of the room. Lila froze, her heart pounding as the donor nodded, impressed. "Nexus Security. That's you, Cole. Hell of a company." Ethan's jaw clenched, his eyes flashing to Lila, but she was already stepping back, her dress suddenly too tight. "Lila," he said, reaching for her, but she shook her head, her voice low. "You're a billionaire." She whispered the word heavy like a stone dropped between them. "All this time, and you didn't tell me." "It's not like that," Ethan said, his voice urgent, but Vanessa cut in, her laugh sharp. "Oh, Ethan, don't play the humble card," she said, her eyes glinting. "Lila deserves to know who she's dealing with. A man with secrets and plenty of them." Lila's eyes burned, her hands trembling as she turned to Ethan. "Were you ever gonna tell me? Or was I just some game, some small-town girl to play hero for?" "No," Ethan said, stepping closer, his voice breaking. "Lila, I swear I was trying to protect you. I wanted you to see me, not the money." But Lila was already moving, pushing through the crowd, Mia trailing her. The ocean's roar filled her ears, the salt air stinging her cheeks as tears fell. She'd trusted him, let him in, and now she felt like a fool. Ryan's face flashed in her mind. Another man, another lie. She reached the beach, the sand cool under her feet, and faced Ethan, who'd followed his shirt. Untucked, his eyes desperate. "Who are you, Ethan?" she demanded, her voice shaking, the waves crashing behind her. "A billionaire playing poor to mess with me. I believed in you, and now I'm standing here looking like an idiot." "I'm not him," Ethan said, his voice raw, stepping closer. "I'm the guy who loves you, Lila. This," he gestured to the estate, the crowd, "it's noise. You're the signal." Her breath caught his words, slicing through her anger, but Vanessa's voice echoed. "Secrets." Lila's chest heaved, tears streaming. "I can't do this," she said, her voice cracking. "I need to go." She turned, walking toward the car, Mia's arm around her. Ethan stood frozen, the tide lapping at his feet, his world crumbling under the weight of his silence. The stars above glittered cold and distant, and for the first time in years, Ethan felt truly alone. The fluorescent lights in the barn at Second Chance Haven buzzed faintly, casting a sterile glow over the stainless steel exam table where Lila Hayes worked. It was past midnight, the Pennsylvania air cool and damp outside the shelter. Quiet, except for the soft whimpers of a stray terrier with a fractured paw. Lila's hands moved with practiced precision, setting the tiny leg in a splint. But her mind was miles away, replaying the Outer Banks, Ethan's voice on that beach. "I'm the guy who loves you." The words should have warmed her, but they stung, tangled in the truth he'd hidden. Nexus Security billions a world she didn't belong to. Her cargo pants were streaked with antiseptic, her braids loose and frayed, her mahogany skin pale under the harsh light. The bone-stitched bandana Noah's magic cloth sat folded on a shelf untouched, since she'd come back from North Carolina 3 weeks ago. She'd thrown herself into work, stitching up strays, training volunteers, anything to drown out the ache in her chest. But Ethan's face, those gray-green eyes raw with regret, kept creeping in, and it made her furious. She'd trusted him, let him past her walls, and now she was picking up the pieces just like she had after Ryan. The shelter's front door creaked, and Mia Lila's best friend slipped in her red curls, bouncing a takeout bag from Iron Tap in hand. "Figured you'd be burning the midnight oil," Mia said, setting the bag on a crate. "Wings extra spicy. Eat, or I'm staging an intervention." Lila managed a half-smile, peeling off her gloves. "You're a saint, but I'm fine, Bull," Mia said, plopping onto a stool. "You've been a ghost since that fancy beach party. Ethan's got you all twisted up, and don't pretend he doesn't." Lila's jaw tightened, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "He lied. Mia, billionaires don't just forget to mention they're billionaires. I'm not some naive girl he gets to play with." Mia popped a wing in her mouth, licking sauce off her fingers. "I get it. Guys got secrets, and that Vanessa chick didn't help. But the way he looked at you, like you hung the damn moon. That's not nothing, Lila." "It's not enough," Lila said, her voice low, almost breaking. She grabbed a wing, the heat grounding her, but Mia's words lingered. Ethan hadn't called, hadn't shown up at the shelter, respecting the space she demanded. But yesterday, a package had arrived. A small canvas painting of a beagle, unmistakably Luna, with Noah's crayon drawing tucked inside. Lila and Luna's stick figures under a heart-shaped sun. Ethan's note was simple. "I'm sorry. We miss you." Her throat had closed, and she'd shoved the package under her couch, but it was still there, haunting her. The next morning, Lila was hosing down kennels when a volunteer waved her over. "You see this?" he said, holding up his phone. The headline on Financial Pulse hit like a slap. "Small-town vet targets billionaire's fortune." The article by Vanessa Klein painted Lila as a schemer cozying up to Ethan Cole to siphon funds for Second Chance Haven. It quoted sources claiming Lila had pushed Ethan for donations, twisting her mobile clinic dream into a grab for power. The photo, a grainy shot of her at Outer Banks laughing with Ethan, made her stomach churn. Lila's hands shook as she scrolled the hose, dripping forgotten at her feet. Volunteers whispered their glances, stinging. By noon, the shelter's inbox was flooded with angry emails, donors pulling pledges, locals questioning her integrity. Lila locked herself in the clinic, her breath shallow. Ryan's betrayal flashing back as lies, her humiliation. Now it was happening again, but worse because this time it wasn't just her heart. It was her work, her home, everything she'd built. Her mom. Ruth called as Lila sat on a crate, head in her hands. "Baby, I saw that trash article," Ruth said, her voice a steady anchor. "You hold your head up. That woman's got an axe to grind, and it ain't about you." "It feels like it's about me," Lila said, her voice cracking. "Mom, I let him in. Ethan. And now this." Ruth's sigh was heavy. "Men like that with money and secrets, they're trouble. Cut him loose, Lila. You're stronger than this." Lila nodded, though Ruth couldn't see, but the thought of cutting Ethan out felt like losing a limb. Noah's drawing those stick figure hearts burned in her mind. She hung up, forcing herself back to work. But the article's shadow followed her, a weight she couldn't shake. That evening, Lila marched into Iron Tap, the local bar, where the jukebox played Springsteen, and the air smelled of fried onions. Vanessa Klein sat at a corner booth, her blonde hair sleek, a martini in hand. Her laptop opened to another draft of lies. Lila's blood boiled, but she kept her voice steady as she slid into the booth across from her. "Retract the article," Lila said, her eyes locked on Vanessa's. "You know it's garbage." Vanessa's lips curled, her gaze cold. "Oh, Lila, you're adorable. Thinking you can scare me. I write the truth, or at least what sells. Ethan's a story, and you're the perfect angle." "It's not about Ethan," Lila snapped, leaning forward. "You're tearing down the shelter. My work for what? Because he didn't want you." Vanessa's smile faltered a crack in her armor, but she recovered fast. "You're out of your league, sweetheart," she said, sipping her drink. "Ethan's world chews up girls like you. He'll ditch you, just like he did me. Save yourself the heartbreak." Lila's fists clenched under the table, her nails digging into her palms. "I don't need your pity," she said, her voice low, fierce. "And I sure as hell don't need Ethan's money. Write what you want. But you're not breaking me." She stood, her heart pounding, and walked out, the bar's neon buzz fading behind her. But Vanessa's words clung like damp air. "Out of your league." Lila wanted to scream to prove her wrong, but doubt gnawed at her. Was she just a fool, falling for a man whose world she'd never understand? Back at her apartment, Lila sank onto her couch, Clover curling beside her. She pulled out Noah's drawing, her fingers tracing the crayon lines, and tears fell hot and fast. Ethan's absence was a void, but his gesture, the painting. The note felt like a lifeline. She wanted to hate him, but she missed him. Missed Noah's laugh. Missed the way Ethan's eyes softened when he looked at her. It was a mess, and she was drowning in it. The next day, a new blow landed. Hannah Cole, Ethan's sister, called Lila, her voice polite but firm over a crackling video call from Africa. "I'm back in the States next week," Hannah said, her face serious on Lila's phone screen. "I need to talk about Noah. He's attached to you, Lila, and I'm worried. If you and Ethan don't work out, it'll crush him." Lila's throat tightened, Noah's hug flashing in her mind. "I'd never hurt Noah," she said, her voice steady despite the ache. "He's a great kid." "I know," Hannah said, softening slightly. "But Ethan's life is complicated. Money, media people like that reporter. I just want to protect my son. If you're not all in, maybe it's better to step back now." The call ended and Lila stared at her phone. Hannah's words echoing Ruth's. Cut him loose. But Noah wasn't just Ethan's nephew. He was the kid who'd called her a hero, who'd given her his magic bandana. And Ethan, for all his lies, had looked at her like she was his whole world. Lila pressed her palms to her eyes, the weight of it all. Vanessa's article, Hannah's warning, her own fear crushing her. She felt like she was standing on a cliff, one step from falling, and she didn't know if she could climb back up. Cross town, Ethan sat in his rented house, a modest split level he'd chosen to keep a low profile. Noah was asleep upstairs, Scout tucked under his arm, but Ethan couldn't rest. He stared at his laptop, Vanessa's article glaring back, every word a knife. He'd wanted to call Lila to show up at the shelter, but her last text, "I need space," had stopped him cold. He'd respected it, but it was killing him, like sitting on the sidelines of his own life. He'd spent years dodging vultures like Vanessa, but this was different. Lila was different. He'd fallen for her, the way she laughed in her kitchen, the way she knelt to comfort Noah, the way her eyes saw through his bullshit, but he'd screwed it up, and now she was paying the price. His phone buzzed a text from his lawyer. "We can sue Klein for defamation, but it'll take time." Time Lila didn't have, not with the shelter bleeding donors. Ethan stood pacing his boots, scuffing the hardwood. He thought of his dad, a factory worker who'd taught him to fix what's broken, not run from it. He couldn't undo the past, but he could fight for Lila, for Noah, for the life he was starting to imagine. He grabbed his keys, a plan forming small, risky, but his. He'd start with the shelter, with something Lila couldn't ignore, something that proved he was more than his money. The next morning, a delivery arrived at Second Chance Haven. Lila signed for it, her hands shaking as she opened the box. Inside was a grant proposal professionally bound, outlining a veterinary training program named after her dad, funded by an anonymous donor. The budget was staggering enough to train dozens of vets to bring her mobile clinic dream within reach. A note slipped out in Ethan's handwriting. "For your dad. For you. I'm still here." Lila's breath caught her eyes blurring. It was Ethan, no question, and it was everything she'd ever wanted for the shelter. But it wasn't enough. Not after the lies, the article, Hannah's warning. She shoved the proposal in a drawer, her heart a tug-of-war between hope and hurt. Vanessa's voice echoed, "He'll ditch you." Ruth's advice rang, "Cut him loose." And Noah's drawing, still on her fridge, whispered, "Don't let go." Lila leaned against the barn wall, the terrier's whimpers soft in the background, and closed her eyes. She was caught trapped between a past that scarred her and a future she was too scared to claim. The barn at Second Chance Haven was a sanctuary in the early morning, its air thick with the scent of hay and antiseptic, the soft snores of sleeping dogs filtering through the kennels. Lila Hayes sat on a crate, her cargo pants dusted with fur, her braids loose around her shoulders. The grant proposal. Ethan had sent a veterinary training program named for her dad, lay open on her lap, its pages worn from her restless fingers. She'd shoved it in a drawer a week ago, determined to ignore it, but it kept pulling her back like a song she couldn't unhear. The numbers were staggering, the vision bold, and the note in Ethan's handwriting, "For your dad. For you. I'm still here," burned in her chest. Lila's apartment had become a battlefield of doubt. Noah's crayon drawing of her and Luna stayed pinned to her fridge, a daily reminder of the boy who'd called her a hero. Her mom. Ruth had softened slightly, admitting the grant was something special, but still warned, "Don't let a man's money blind you, baby." Mia, ever the optimist, kept pushing. "He's fighting for you, Lila. When's the last time a guy did that?" But Vanessa Klein's article, that vicious Financial Pulse hit piece, still cast a shadow. Donors were trickling back thanks to Lila's tireless emails, but the whispers lingered, and Lila felt exposed like a nerve laid bare. She closed the proposal, her eyes drifting to the bone-stitched bandana on a shelf. Noah's magic cloth. She hadn't seen him or Ethan since Outer Banks, and the absence ached sharper than she'd expected. Ethan had respected her need for space. No calls, no visits, but his silence felt like a wound, proof he could walk away just like Ryan had. Yet the grant, the painting, Noah's drawing. They were his voice, quiet, but persistent, and Lila was running out of reasons to shut him out. That afternoon, Mia burst into the shelter, her red curls wild, a grin splitting her face. "You're not going to believe this," she said, thrusting her phone at Lila. It was an email from a former Nexus security intern dug up by Mia's cousin, who worked in tech. The email detailed Vanessa Klein's attempt years ago to blackmail Ethan into a relationship by threatening to leak proprietary Nexus code. Ethan had refused, cutting her off, and Vanessa had nursed the grudge ever since. "This is why she's coming for you," Mia said, triumphant. "She's not just a reporter, she's a scorned ex with an axe to grind." Lila's pulse quickened, her hands gripping the phone. The email painted Ethan in a new light. Not a playboy hiding his wealth, but a man who'd stood his ground even at a cost, Vanessa's article. Her venom at Outer Banks suddenly made sense. It wasn't about Lila. Not really. It was about Ethan. About a wound Vanessa couldn't let heal. Lila handed the phone back, her mind racing. "Doesn't change the fact. He lied," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Mia rolled her eyes. Girl, he's human, and he's out here naming programs after your dad. You gonna keep punishing him, or you gonna talk to him? Lila didn't answer, but Mia's words stuck like a pebble in her shoe. That night, alone with Clover purring on her couch, Lila pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over Ethan's number, her heart, a tug of war. She didn't call, but she typed a text. I'm at a vet conference in Charleston this weekend. If you're around, maybe we can talk. She hit send before she could overthink it, her breath catching. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a step, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. Charleston was a city of charm and salt air, its cobblestone streets lined with pastel houses, the Cooper River glinting under a late afternoon sun. The veterinary conference was held at a waterfront hotel, its ballroom packed with vets swapping stories about feline diabetes and equine lameness. Lila stood at a booth for Second Chance Haven, her white sundress, a stark contrast to her usual scrubs, her braids swept over one shoulder. She'd presented her mobile clinic idea to a panel earning nods and a potential grant, but her mind was elsewhere, scanning the crowd for a familiar pair of gray-green eyes. Ethan appeared as the sun dipped low, his linen shirt rolled to the elbows, his dark hair tousled by the sea breeze. He carried a small paper bag, his smile tentative but warm, like he was afraid she'd bolt. Heard you killed it in there, he said, stopping a few feet away, giving her space. Figured I'd swing by. You okay with that? Lila's throat tightened, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. Depends, she said, her voice steady but soft. You here to talk or to dodge talk, Ethan said, his eyes locked on hers, raw and unguarded. All of it. Lila, no more secrets, she nodded, gesturing to a path along the river. They walked the water lapping at the docks, palm trees swaying overhead. The bag crinkled in Ethan's hand and he handed it to her. For you, he said. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with a paw print, pages blank, but for a note in his handwriting. For your dreams. Write them big. Lila's chest ached, the gesture small but piercing, like he'd seen a part of her she barely showed. I was wrong, Ethan said, stopping by a bench, the river sparkling behind him. Hiding who I was. I thought it'd keep you safe, keep us real. But it hurt you, and I'll carry that forever. I'm Ethan Cole, billionaire. Yeah, but I'm also the guy who's been a mess since you walked away. Lila's eyes glistened, her fingers clutching the journal. You should have told me, she said, her voice trembling. I let you in, Ethan. Do you know how hard that was? And then Vanessa, that article. It's like Ryan all over again. But worse, because I cared more. Ethan stepped closer, his voice low, urgent. I'm not him, Lila. I've spent years dodging people who want my money, my name. I was scared you'd see me as a paycheck, not a person. But you're not like that. You're the realest thing I've ever known. She looked away, the river blurring through tears. Mia's email flashed in her mind. Vanessa's blackmail. Ethan's refusal. I know about Vanessa, she said, meeting his eyes. What she tried to do to you. Why didn't you tell me? Ethan's jaw tightened, surprise flickering across his face. Because it didn't matter, he said. She's the past, you're the future. You and Noah. You're why I'm changing things. I've cut back at Nexus, moved priorities around, so I can be here, be present for you. Lila's breath caught his words, slicing through her defenses. The river path was quiet now, the conference crowd thinning, the sky streaked with pink and gold. Ethan reached for her hand, his touch hesitant, and she didn't pull away. I'm scared, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Your world. Noah. All of it. It's too much. Then we'll face it together, Ethan said, his voice steady, his thumb brushing her knuckles. I'm not asking for forever, Lila. Just a chance. She looked up, his eyes holding hers, and something broke loose inside her. She stepped closer, her hand rising to his chest, feeling his heartbeat under her palm. Ethan leaned in his lips, brushing hers soft at first, then deeper. A kiss that tasted of salt air and promises. It was electric, a release of weeks of hurt, and Lila clung to him, her fingers curling into his shirt like he was the only thing keeping her grounded. But as they pulled apart, the world rushed back. The conference, Vanessa's article, Hannah's warning. Lila's heart raced her mind a storm. "I'm not ready," she said, her voice trembling, stepping back. "I want this, Ethan, but I need time. I can't just jump." Ethan nodded, his eyes soft but resolute. "I'll wait," he said, his voice low. "As long as it takes." Lila clutched the journal, her lips still tingling, and turned back to the hotel, the river's whisper following her. She wasn't saying yes, but she wasn't saying no, and that was enough for now. Back in Pennsylvania, Lila threw herself into the shelter, the Charleston kiss, a secret she carried like an ember. Noah visited one morning, dropped off by a sitter, his face lighting up when he saw her. "Lila," he cried, hugging her. Luna bounding at his heels. "I missed you, Uncle. Ethan says you're family." Lila's heart stuttered, her eyes stinging as she knelt. "You're my favorite cheerleader, kid," she said, ruffling his hair. "Don't tell Luna," Noah giggled, handing her a new drawing. Her Ethan and Luna under a rainbow. Lila's throat closed the word family, echoing heavy with hope and fear. That night, Ethan showed up at her apartment, his hands in his pockets, a letter in his hand. "I wasn't gonna come," he said, standing in her doorway, the porch light casting shadows on his face. "But I needed you to have this." The letter was an apology, pages long, detailing his life, the poverty, the pressure, the paranoia that came with wealth. He wrote about Noah, about how Lila had taught him to be a better uncle, a better man. "I love you," he ended, "and I'll keep proving it, whether you choose me or not." Lila's eyes blurred, her fingers trembling. "Noah called me family," she said, her voice soft. "That's big, Ethan. I don't want to let him down." "You won't," Ethan said, his voice fierce. "You're his hero." Lila mine, too. She didn't invite him in, but she kept the letter, tucking it beside Noah's drawing. Clover purred on her lap, the apartment quiet, but Lila's heart was loud, pounding with a truth she couldn't ignore. Ethan was fighting for her, and she was running out of reasons to push him away. The shelter buzzed the next day. Volunteers prepping for the annual fundraiser. Lila met with the board, presenting Ethan's grant proposal, her voice steady as she outlined the training program. The board approved it, and for the first time in weeks, Lila felt a spark of hope, like her dad's legacy was within reach. But Hannah's call lingered a warning about Noah, and Vanessa's article still loomed a cloud over the event. Lila stood in the barn watching Luna play the bandana back in her pocket. She thought of Charleston, of Ethan's kiss, his letter, Noah's rainbow. She wasn't ready to forgive, not fully, but she was tired of running. The fundraiser was days away, and Ethan would be there. She knew it, like she knew her own heartbeat. Whatever happened next, it would change everything, and Lila, for the first time, felt ready to face it. The barn at Second Chance. Haven pulsed with life, its rafters draped in fairy lights that cast a warm glow over the crowd. The Pennsylvania night was cool, the air thick with the scent of grilled hot dogs and apple cider, the chatter of donors mingling with the joyful barks of adoptable dogs. Tables lined with gingham cloths held homemade pies and jars of lemonade, while kids chased glow sticks across the grass, their laughter echoing. The annual fundraiser was in full swing, a celebration of strays saved and dreams rebuilt. But for Lila Hayes, standing near the back in a simple black dress, It was a crossroads. Her braids caught the light, her deep brown eyes scanning the stage where Ethan Cole stood, microphone in hand. His linen shirt open at the collar, his gray-green eyes locked on her. The crowd hushed as he spoke, his voice steady but raw, slicing through the barn's hum. "I've made mistakes," he said, his words echoing the flash forward from months ago. "I hid who I was from someone I love, thinking it'd keep her safe. Instead, I hurt her. Lila Hayes, you're the heart of everything I want to be. I'm sorry." Gasps rippled through the crowd, a woman in a flannel vest whispering, "That's Ethan Cole, the Nexus guy." Ethan pressed on his jaw, set. A reporter, Vanessa Klein, wrote, "Lies about Lila, calling her a gold digger out to use me. It's nonsense, and I'm suing her for it. Lila's the real deal, and she deserves better than my secrets." Lila's hand trembled, her breath catching as tears pricked her eyes. The barn seemed to shrink, the lights too bright. Ethan's words a lifeline she wasn't sure she could grab. He stepped off the stage, his boots thudding, moving toward her as the crowd parted. Lila's heart pounded. Charleston flashing back that kiss by the river, his promise to wait. She'd come tonight expecting a fight, but this, his public stand, his apology was more than she'd dared hope. "Ethan," she whispered as he reached her, his eyes searching hers, raw and vulnerable, "you didn't have to do this." "I did," he said, his voice low, urgent. "You deserve the truth. Lila, all of it. I love you and I'm done hiding." Her throat tightened, the crowd's murmurs fading. She wanted to say yes, to fall into him, but doubt lingered. Vanessa's article, Hannah's warning, her own scars from Ryan. "I'm not ready," she said, her voice trembling. Stepping back, "I hear you, Ethan, but I need time." Ethan's face fell, but he nodded, his eyes steady. "I'll be here," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Whenever you're ready." Lila turned, slipping through the crowd, her dress brushing against a table as she headed for the barn's side door. Noah's voice cut through, small but clear. "Lila." He ran to her, his freckled face bright, Luna bounding at his heels. He hugged her, his arms tight, a daisy tucked in his hand. "Your family," he said, pressing the flower into her palm. "Don't go forever, okay?" Lila's eyes stung, her fingers closing around the daisy. "I'm not going far, champ," she said, ruffling his hair. She glanced back, catching Ethan's gaze, and something shifted, a crack in her walls, letting light through. She stepped outside the night air, cool on her cheeks, and leaned against the barn, the daisy, a fragile promise in her hand. The next week was a blur at Second Chance Haven. The fundraiser had raised record funds thanks to Ethan's speech, and the viral buzz around his stand against Vanessa donors flooded back the shelter's inbox, brimming with support, and Lila's mobile clinic dream felt closer than ever. Vanessa, facing Ethan's lawsuit, issued a public retraction, her apology clipped and grudging, but Lila barely noticed. She was too busy stitching up strays, training new volunteers, and dodging Mia's relentless teasing. "You're gonna cave, girl. That man's got your number." But Hannah Cole's arrival cast a new shadow. Ethan's sister, fresh from Africa, met Lila at Bruin Paws, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes sharp but kind. Noah played nearby, tossing a ball for Luna, oblivious to the tension. "I owe you an apology," Hannah said, stirring her coffee. "I was wrong about you, Lila. Noah talks about you like you hung the stars, and Ethan, he's different with you." "Better." Lila's chest tightened, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "I'd never hurt Noah," she said, her voice steady. "But your brother's world. It's a lot. I'm still figuring out if I fit." Hannah nodded, her smile small but warm. "You do, more than you know. Just don't let fear win. Okay?" The words lingered as Lila drove home, Clover purring in the passenger seat, Hannah's approval, Noah's daisy, Ethan's letter. They were pieces of a puzzle she was finally ready to solve. She pulled out the bracelet Ethan had given her months ago, a simple leather band with a paw print charm, and slipped it on. It felt like a choice, a step towards something bigger than her scars. A month later, Lila stood at Willow Bend, the river park, where she and Ethan had flown kites with Noah. The willows swayed their branches, brushing the water, the late afternoon sun painting the grass gold. Lila wore jeans and a green sweater, the bracelet glinting on her wrist, the bone-stitched bandana tucked in her pocket. She'd texted Ethan to meet her, her heart a mix of nerves and certainty, like standing on the edge of a dive. She was ready to take. Ethan arrived, his jeans faded, his flannel shirt soft with wear, his gray-green eyes bright with hope. "You called," he said, stopping a few feet away, his smile tentative. "I was starting to think I'd scared you off for good." Lila laughed, the sound easing the tension. "You tried," she said, stepping closer, the river's whisper grounding her. "But I'm tougher than that." He chuckled, his hands in his pockets, but his eyes never left hers. "So, what's this about Hayes? You gonna keep me guessing?" Lila took a breath, her fingers brushing the bracelet. "I've been scared," she said, her voice soft but steady. "Your world, the money, the headlines. It's a lot. And after Ryan, I thought letting you in would break me. But you're not him. Ethan. You're the guy who named a program after my dad, who loves Noah like he's your own, who stood up for me in front of everyone." Ethan's breath caught his eyes glistening. "Lila." He started, but she held up a hand, her smile small but fierce. "I'm not promising easy," she said, stepping closer, her voice trembling. "But I want to try. For you, for Noah, for us. I choose us." Ethan's face broke into a grin, his hands reaching for hers, their fingers lacing together. "That's all I need," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "We'll figure it out, Lila. One step at a time." Noah's shout interrupted his sneakers pounding the grass as he ran toward them, Luna yipping at his heels. "Lila, Uncle Ethan," he called, crashing into them, his arms wrapping around Lila's waist. Luna says, "You gotta stay forever." Lila laughed, kneeling to hug him, the daisy from the fundraiser tucked in his pocket. "Luna's pretty smart," she said, winking at Ethan, who pulled her up, his hand warm in hers. They stood there, the three of them, the river sparkling the willows, whispering a family, not by blood, but by choice. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows, and Lila felt it a peace she hadn't known she could claim. Weeks later, Lila sat on her couch. Clover curled beside her, the apartment quiet except for the hum of a radiator. Noah's drawings covered her fridge, a gallery of rainbows and dogs, and Ethan's letter lay on her coffee table, its pages soft from rereading. The shelter was thriving. The training program underway, and Lila's mobile clinic was no longer a dream, but a plan with blueprints and a launch date. Vanessa's retraction had faded from the headlines, and Ethan's lawsuit was moving forward, a quiet victory Lila didn't need to celebrate. She'd found her own. Ruth called, her voice warm through the phone. "You're choosing him, aren't you?" she asked, a smile in her tone. "I'm choosing us," Lila said, tracing the bracelet, her heart full. "Me, Ethan, Noah. It's messy, but it's mine." Mia texted later, a string of heart emojis. "You're a badass. Hayes. Billionaires. Don't scare you." Lila laughed, the sound filling the room, and glanced out her window at the Pennsylvania stars. They glittered bright and endless, a reminder that the road ahead, Ethan's world, Noah's needs, her own fears, wouldn't be easy. But his heartbeat, steady when they hugged at the park, was a promise she trusted, and Lila was ready to walk that road one step at a time. If Lila and Ethan's journey from secrets to second chances made you believe in love that fights through the storm, hit that subscribe button to catch more stories that tug at the heart. Drop a comment below. What's a moment you gave someone a second chance? What made you take the leap? Let's keep the conversation going.